Cool. Hi, friends. Yeah, thank you for that enthusiastic burst of... That's proof that we're at a programmer convention here, because it is 8:45 in the morning, and we're all amazed we made it here today. Just take a moment and look at the empty seat next to you and just pour a little bit out for your homies that didn't make it, because they're asleep. And that's okay, because you can tell them how amazing this talk was. And when you do that, be sure that you really sell it, okay? Oh my God, it was so good. Just if you'd only gotten up. But you're a developer. So sad. As very kindly said, I do have a number of podcasts, and I also have a very intense imposter syndrome. There used to be a time when if you actually Googled phony, you would find me, because I'd written a thought piece about being a phony. So imposter syndrome was a big problem for me. And in order to combat that, I started a podcast. Tried to copy NPR, National Public Radio, so I made for this fresh air for developers. And I've done over 585 episodes. That's every Thursday for whatever the math is, I don't know, 10, 11 years. Long time. To be consistently mediocre for over a decade requires so much effort you don't even know. But because of my imposter syndrome, it took me about 450 episodes to realize it's a really good show. So I stand before you as a recovering imposter to tell you this is a really good show, and if you're not listening, you need to check it out. It has a fantastic group of people talking about really cool stuff. Even though I do work for Microsoft, this existed long before Microsoft and will exist long after. It is non-denominational in its focus, and I think you'll enjoy it. Another great one is called This Developer's Life, which is nothing at all like anything you've ever heard of. It's in no way a complete ripoff of This American Life. I have to say that for legal reasons. That said, it's a completely obvious copy of This American Life, and you should check it out. Makes me happy. So, as said before, and apologies will be made, I work here. But in fact, I work in Portland, which is kind of like working on the forest moon. I'm outside the Redmond reality distortion field, safely on the forest moon in Redmond, and I work in open source, which makes it okay. When I went to work at Microsoft, people said I was a sellout because I was coming from an open source background. It was more OSS than FOSS, but it was still open source. And people said, "You're a sellout, you're a phony, you piece of crap," and it hurt my feelings. It made me feel really sad, and I don't know how I could work through that. The emotional pain. Somehow I found the inner strength to deal with that. Because the time before Microsoft was a dark time. This is me on the side there. That's me before Microsoft, and here's me after Microsoft. So, I think it was the right decision for my career. It's been a little bit of a challenging place to work. Of course, you're familiar with the Microsoft org chart. We have this model of what's called co-opetition. So I wanted to take you on a journey with a little edutainment today with nods to KRS-One to talk about the cloud, the back end, the server, and the browser, the front end, and how we got here. And this all started when I was talking with an older developer at Intel. This was an older, and when I say older, I am older. There are people here who are older than I am. Immediately when you say older, there's like oh, how old are we talking about? Is that the age that I am? This person was at least 120. So no one here who is older needs to feel bad about that. She was probably 120. I don't have any pictures of her, but I do have a picture of my dad taking a selfie, just to give you a sense of the generation gap that we're talking about, right? This is the kind of person that could look at some Lisp and just immediately say, "Oh, you missed a parentheses there," and then know just the right number of parentheses to put in, and it's like, back, when I was a boy. She was an exceptional developer, early single-digit Intel employee, the kind of person that just invented the compiler. That's the level of developer that we're talking about. So she comes up to me after I gave a talk on web development and said, "I'd like to be a web developer." Now, this is a very awkward thing. I've been doing software for 25 years. She'd been doing it for 45 years. So she's actually been doing software longer than I've been alive and wanted to do web development. And I said, well, I thought you already know that. You've been in software for so many years doing all this amazing work. And she was like, well, no, I was working on the silicon. I was doing like the quantum effects of the 386 or whatever. I don't know. I went to community college. What do I know? She missed out on the web. Here is a PhD, computer science, low-level, amazing software engineer who just was not a web person. So I started thinking, what would we teach a web person if they had that Rip Van Winkle kind of environment, that situation where they are your non-technical, non-gender specific parent, and they also happen to have a PhD in electrical engineering, right? How would you teach them that? So she wants to learn how to be a web developer. So I said, all right, well, let's talk about what they mean when they say cloud, because that word cloud gets overused, right? Cloud is what hipsters call hosting, right? I've got a cloud. It's a Linux machine under my desk, right? It's a little more complicated than that. So I went back to base principles. There was a quote, one of these famous internet quotes by a person named Thomas J. Watson, who I think was president of IBM or something. And this is one of those quotes where we can't prove that this was said. I don't even know if this person existed. And I couldn't find a picture of this person. But I did have this really old book. So we'll just say that that's the guy. Okay. So this old guy says, I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers. So what does that mean, 5 computers, right? This is when a computer was a refrigerator, right? And the world market was 1 refrigerator per continent, right? So there'd be like the South American computer, and you would send batch jobs to that computer, and it would do the job. This actually happened, though, right? There's 5 computers. It's just that they're cloud. 5 clouds, right? There's the Microsoft cloud, there's the Google cloud. I understand that there's a popular bookstore that is developing a cloud, right? There's a number of different clouds. This is a picture of the Azure cloud. I know that we're a little behind, but we've just got color, which is awesome. And we're upgrading it with new containers all the time, new and fantastic software, and he's really excited. Well, actually. There we go. He's really excited about that. But I said, what's the characteristic of the cloud? What does it mean to have something in the cloud, and why is it different than just hosting or just a refrigerator somewhere in South America? I said, well, let's think about it like this. What are the characteristics of an operating system, and what is that operating system's relationship to hardware? I said, are you familiar with this diagram? And the lady from Intel says, yeah, I invented all of that. And that was super awkward. But like any mediocre white man, I persisted. And I said, well, actually, no. I said, these are the characteristics of an operating system. So these are the things that you need, right, for something to be an operating system, right? Where it becomes interesting is when it becomes portable. Right, that first time when you see a virtual machine and you say, I can move it around, and the virtual machine doesn't know it's virtual. That was so amazing. Like I put it on a USB key and I put it in my pocket and I took it somewhere else and I gave it to someone. The portability of a virtual machine is one of the first things that starts to differentiate from hosting. And we'll talk about other reasons in a second. The ability to programmatically go and find virtual machines from a catalog and then start them up. Like you can go up to somewhere like VM Depot and say, oh, I want this Jenkins on Ubuntu, so what are the commands that I need? And you say, well, here's the command line to go and make a Jenkins virtual machine. And I said, well, how do you do that here at Intel? And she says, well, you have to fill out a form and you have to fax it to IT, and then they will provision a virtual machine for you. And I was just like, oh my God, that can't be true. Like, it's literally true. And you know that they probably then scan the fax back into something and then OCR that, and it's a whole thing. I said that the idea of a cloud has to have both that virtual machine, but also the programmatic aspect of things, the programmatability, is that a word? The idea that I can go out to the command line and type something like, Google Cloud, whatever, or Azure, VM, create, and then a virtual machine gets made. And it's got ASCII art, which makes Microsoft no longer evil, right? the elasticity of it, the programmatic access to the cloud is what's so important. So then she says, well, I should just use virtual machines and stuff. And I said, well, that's where things get a little complicated, right? Because virtual machines are fun, but they're free like a puppy. And it's like, hey, free puppy. And then it's like, is the puppy still alive? I got to run apt-get update on the puppy and apt-get upgrade. I got to shush into the puppy. Do you all shush into your machines? I'm trying to make that a thing. Do you all SSH in? No, we shush into machines. And you do it with a little bit of a shush into the machine. So if you could make that a thing for me, that would be great. Just throw it into casual conversation at work, but don't tell anyone like I just did. You just kind of like, yeah, I was shushing into production yesterday. I'm like, oh, okay. And then just see if they start saying it back to you, but don't tell them that they're doing that. Just see if it turns into a thing. You make a virtual machine, you own that virtual machine, right? You got to go and shush into production on that virtual machine and deal with that. When a bug happens, like a really cool open source hipster bug like Heartbleed, or one of those bugs like bugs get names and logos and websites now, which is awesome. They got a Usenet posting when I was a kid, but now they get there's a whole, and they get a Facebook group now, I guess. So, you wake up at 2 in the morning, you have an expense reporting application, but it runs on a machine that you have to shush into and fix, so it's on you now. Wait a second, I just wanted to deal with my expense reporting application. I don't want to think about virtual machines. Virtual machines are no fun, just like puppies are no fun, because you got to keep them alive. I just want puppy as a service, right? I just want a puppy when I want a puppy. Like, I love my children, but I'm really looking forward to grandchildren, because that's children as a service, right? And that's the kind of experience. I just want to load them up with sugar and then send them off. But I load them up with sugar and then they're still here. Did you have somewhere to go? But when you do make a virtual machine, of course, it's got unlimited flexibility. You can run frickin' Erlang on the thing if you want to, and that's totally cool. But if you make something that's a platform as a service instead of infrastructure as a service, then you can think at a higher level. I said, you know that virtual machines exist, you understand that virtual machines exist, but you don't want to. And this is an important aspect of computer science, and an important aspect of your growth as a computer scientist, is you know that something exists, you understand it fully, and then you abstract away from that thing and then deny that it exists at all. Right? Like software as a service is a denial that virtual machines exist, right? My dad would not let me drive an automatic shift car. He insisted that I had to get a manual shift first, because he told me that someday someone would break their leg and then I would need to drive them to the hospital. Or we've all had that. People are nodding like, yeah, my parents said the same thing. Someone's going to break their leg, and if you don't know how to drive a manual stick car, they're going to die. They're going to bleed out because you didn't learn how to drive a manual stick. It's all your fault. He would not let me have a digital watch until I learned how to do the handy watch thing. I don't know how to do that. I faked it. But you got to get the kids, there's a young person, and you got to start with assembler and C, and you learn how to malloc and free, and then afterwards you go, psych, now you can have automatic garbage collection. Don't give the kids garbage collection up front. They don't deserve to just start newing up memory left and right. Woohoo, look, a list of stuff. Oh, JavaScript, yeah, not cute. Make them suffer. It's an important part of life. 6502 assembler. You start there, young person, and then you talk to me later. You make me a Zelda game entirely in 6502, and then you get your Switch. It's a lot like this, right? Your first house. Oh, I'm going to buy a house. My sister-in-law just bought a house. She's in her 40s, but it's their first house. It's going to be a big deal. And I don't even have the heart to mention about, now you got to learn about gutters and roofs and sump pumps and all that. Well, that's not the part I wanted. I wanted the cool part where we watch TV on our big screen. No, you have to deal with the cracks in the sidewalk and all that kind of stuff. Your first house is the virtual machine. You don't want to do that. You want to have a hotel. You want a platform as a service. So I like that style, that model. Just like the hotel room that I'm in. You can thrash your platform as a service, and it will auto-heal. Just like the hotel room that I've totally thrashed last night because I'm a rock star. And I don't have to worry about it because I'm going to come back and it's going to be put back together. It's going to be like, wow, it's going to be amazing. this idea of abstracting away complexities is so fundamental, it's so important, although it can be extremely painful sometimes. There was a time in the 90s when I was working on web farms, doing large-scale systems, 3 or even 4 computers working in tandem. It was an amazing time. And you would fly someone in from F5 or Cisco to put together a local director or some kind of a web farm system, and it was amazing, amazing time. And I spent the 90s building web farms to the point where my multi-page resume, I'm old, I get a multi-page resume, the second page is just load balancing. That's what a badass I am. Now, it's a slider bar. 10 years of my experience as a software engineer is now a slider bar. I can literally pull page 2 out and just talk about checkboxes and slider bars. That's how sad that is. But I'm not bitter. And I've got young people in my office that are like, oh, this web farm is taking like minutes to configure. Blah, blah. So then I've become like, old programmer who shakes fist at cloud, like literally at the cloud. We'll go out to the command line. I'll type like Azure Site Scale. And then this line right here, I cry every freaking time. Updating a server farm. And I think about like updating a server farm. That used to be like going down to PC Micro Center and actually purchasing the machine and then racking the machine. And I just imagine all of that happening as the millennial on my team is just like, slider bar. Again, not bitter at all. The point is, though, not that the slider bar made it easy for young people, but that the slider bar is representative of best practices. It is the true encapsulation of us standing on the shoulders of giants. Yeah, we suffered in the 90s to make web farms, but now we understand it. Round-robin load balancing, session infinity, all the different things that one needs to know about that has now turned into something like the Zeit cloud that we'll hear about from Guillermo Roche, where you just literally type now and push enter, and it makes a global web farm for you, which is really obnoxious because he picked now. He could have just made it N and just pushed enter, and that would have been like, or he could have just made it enter. Just go to any folder and push enter, and it will automatically make a web, but he made it now, so at least you feel like you're doing some work. You should definitely check out his talk later. But it is the encapsulation of best practices over many years. But for some people, they think it's magic. Right? They look at that and they're just like, what just happened? Magic. And what's significant about this GIF and why this GIF, more than any other GIF in the world, is significant because it explains the generation gap. Because half of you are saying, oh, okay, it's Doug Henning. And the other half are saying, oh, it's Shia LaBeouf. And there's only like 3 of you who know who both Doug Henning and Shia LaBeouf are. That is the generation gap. And some of you are frantically Googling, who's Doug Henning? And why is Shia LaBeouf dressed like Doug Henning? So I'm expressing all of this to the engineer at Intel and saying, you know all this stuff already. This is great. You have an understanding of the fundamentals of an operating system, of the fundamentals of things like web farms, but you don't need to anymore. Those are abstractions that have been hidden away from you. And this is really exciting that those things have been hidden from you. But you have to know, one level below. So then she says, well, what language should I use? I know C, I know C++. Should I use that? And I said, you use whatever makes you happy. That is the great thing. If you pick a cloud, again, I work for Microsoft, but you pick any cloud, the cloud shouldn't care about language choice. Use whatever one that makes you happy. .NET, Node, Java, Python, PHP. Well, not PHP, but really anything. Now, just to be clear, I was accused of language shaming once because I made that PHP joke at a conference. They said I was language shaming. PHP has 35 million users and powers Facebook. I think PHP can take a little ribbing. So that was meant in all just good fun. PHP sucks. All right. Totally kidding. Use the one that makes you happy. Okay. Also, the great thing about an open cloud is an open cloud lets you have SDKs that are themselves open. right? So everything we do is on GitHub. All the clouds have done this. No matter what cloud you pick, the source code is there. Don't pick one that is hidden from you or tries to do magic. You want to be able to get to that virtual machine if you need to, but a good cloud will hide that virtual machine from you. This brings up the point when you become like a chief architect or some kind of fancy person, a suit type, right? And you're going to start talking about, uptime and things like that at a CTO level. What are you thinking about? Well, you're thinking about the bottom line, and you're thinking about dollars as it applies to the hardware and the software that you are deploying. Now, one time I was at a conference. I think it was in Scandinavia somewhere. I don't know. There were cobblestones. It was nice. And there's a guy there named Adrian Cockcroft who was the chief architect of Netflix. And he was given a talk about how they were deploying into Europe because Netflix hadn't gone to Europe yet. And they were moving from spinning Rust hard drives over to SSDs. I guess they were tired of hearing their hard drives. So they moved over to SSDs. And he was amazing. I mean, he was like English, and he looked like John Malkovich. So he gets like +2 charisma just for like showing up, right? And and he said, "Oh yes, he's a doctor of unsolvable numbers or whatever." And he's chief architect at Netflix, and he gives this whole talk about the decision process that they made to move from spinning Rust over to SSDs. And he says, okay, well, there's a certain number of IOPS, right? This input operations per second, this number, this index that tells you how fast the I/O is on your cloud. He says, well, we were getting 300 IOPS for $1, and now we want to get, I don't know how to do an English accent, so I'll just do a Southern, I don't know what that was for. 300 IOPS for $1, and then 3,000 IOPS for $3. I was like, oh my goodness, 3x more money, 10 times more perf, awesome. I totally see why you did that. And he was thinking about this at a very large kind of, worldwide level. So he gives this talk, and he's English, and people are going, and it's amazing. Then it comes for the Q&A. Very nice young person comes up, Danish kid. I don't know how to do a Danish accent, so I'll just do nerd. And he goes, actually, sir, the SSDs have a mean time before failure. And basically says, you're an idiot. Why are you going to SSDs? They're totally unreliable. What's going to happen when all those SSDs fail and destroy Netflix? Could not believe it. We think, what's he going to say? He says, that's not my problem, I'm renting them. Think about that. What happens if all the hard drives fail? Not his problem. Not his problem. He's renting them. He understands that this was fundamentally a financial issue. It was this much money, this much perf, awesome. The kid may or may not have a point, but the kid was thinking at the wrong level of abstraction. But the part that was amazing is that while the rest of us were running around in our brains oh my, did you see what happened? The kid didn't know that he'd been cut. It was like one of those ninja movies where the ninja goes shoo, and then the guy's head gets cut, and then it's sliding down, and then half his head is there, and the body doesn't know if it should fall. And the kid's just sitting there you've been cut. Should we push him over? What should we do, right? No, I don't have a GIF of that, and there's young people here, but I do have this GIF, which is similar to what that moment was like. We'll just look at that one more time. Right? You don't come for the chief architect of Netflix if he did not send for you. You say, yes, sir, or ma'am. Excellent talk. So he's thinking about dashboards, right? He's thinking about, a real startup. You have a startup when you have a map of the world up on an LCD in your house, or actually, I have a startup. I don't really have a startup. I registered a domain, and I go to a Panera Bread regularly. That makes me We have offices all over the country. That makes me a founder. But you know, you go and you get yourself like a nice Costco $300 TV and you put up a big map of the world and then you're like, yeah, we got stuff all over the world, right? But a good dashboard really helps you understand it. This is the Azure dashboard, and this lets you think about things in real significant terms without showing you necessarily the underlying hardware. I don't really care about that. I try to explain the difference between the cloud and hosting is that with hosting, you can visit your hard drive. You can go and see where it is imprisoned, and you can visit it and touch it and put your finger through the gate and say that's where the data is. But in the cloud, you can't, because it's everywhere. You put 1 byte down in cloud storage, and that byte suddenly is 3 bytes, and it's everywhere in the world. You have no way of knowing. So you want your dashboards to be that high-level dashboard. Sometimes people go a little bit over the top, and that's fine. And then they overreact, and then you get the older people like myself that are like, I got a dashboard. That's all the dashboard I ever need. All right, fine, I'll upgrade. H-top. All right, now I got a dashboard. Here's the thing. While this is useful, you can't argue that that is the dashboard that you want to be thinking about. It's simply not. You are wrong, right? There are certain things. Water is wet, the sky is blue, and Luigi is the superior Mario brother. This is simply fact. You cannot argue that this dashboard is better than H-top when it has always been Luigi. I mean, it's Luigi, always. Don't imply otherwise. So we get a sense, an understanding of the cloud, we get an understanding of the server and the responsibilities of the server and the layers of abstraction that allow us to think about the server. So then I said, let's shift over to the browser. I said, remember this? She says, yeah, I invented that. And I say, this is the characteristics of an operating system. And there was a time when you would sit down at a computer that looked like that, and you would talk to a refrigerator that looked like that. And you would load a program, and that program would pop up, and then it would present the user interface on the screen over there, right? And who did the work, though? Where did the work happen? The work happened on the refrigerator. It happens on the mainframe, right? We're still doing that in 2017. We're still concatenating strings on the server and then doing all that thinking and all that processing, and then we're sending it across the wire to quad processor pocket supercomputers with accelerated graphics that are effectively just waiting to receive another byte from the server. And I don't think that's what Berners-Lee necessarily expected when he made this. This is the first page of the internet. This is interesting because this page still exists and is still at the same location. Your blog has changed URL schemes 3 times, and you've broken links without redirects. But the first page of the internet still exists at the singular and original location. Now, when he made this, he thought it was going to be an infinite book, right? It was all about hypermedia. That's why everyone's excited about REST, because it gets back to the fundamentals of the web. I don't think he thought this was going to be an application platform. Berners-Lee is very modest. I want you to take a moment and look at his job title. You have some pretty complicated job titles, and I just want you to take a moment and understand that he did not put "the" in front of his job title. He didn't even put "senior." If he had known, he couldn't have known, right? He didn't know that it was going to become what it became. He didn't think it was going to become an application platform. He didn't think that people would find the web wanting and then make PDFs. And he could never have foreseen that PDF would become the 5th most popular religion on the planet. So Berners-Lee's web didn't do what we needed it to do, right? So we made it. We forced it to do what we wanted it to do. And how do we know when that happened? We all remember that day. You're surfing the web. Hey, we're surfing the web. And then Java loaded. And that happened for a while. And then this came along. Hey, we can do it too. Whee! And then these guys are like, we've got YouTube. We're still relevant, right? Skip intro. Yay. Why were we doing that? Let's talk about the reason. The fundamental reason was that we wanted virtual machines. We made little plug-in virtual machines to make this web platform on the client side. but we misused it. We made these weird little programs that ran inside of browsers. Now, I've got a little Prius, and I always go to the Toyota dealership, and I'm always interested to see the hardware that they use. I think that we're all the same, all of us that are software people. You find yourself at a kiosk, whether you're checking in at the airport or you're looking at your mechanic, and you're like, oh, what kind of software you got there? You're running Clipper? What are you running there? And then at some point, you find yourself on the other side, learning the hotkeys, of how to upgrade yourself to first class. Maybe that's just me. So I always go and I'm interested in what the Toyota dealership is using. So one day I show up to the Toyota dealership and he says, I got a new system. Want to check it out? Oh yeah, let's see it. So he says, yeah, check it out. He pulls out this Dell because he used to have been using a dumb terminal, and the dumb terminal would talk to an AS400 in the back end, right? We've all seen those, text boxes over data. So he says, check out the new system. Shiny new Dell, fires up Windows XP, and I'm like, ooh, do I... So I didn't say anything. So he fires up Windows XP, he loads up Firefox, opens a jar file from a local server. Java says, are you sure you want to run Java? And he's like, yeah. And it's like, are you really sure you want to run Java? Type, I'm really sure I want to run Java on the client side, and then sign your name, and then there's like a biometric thing, and there's like a finger stick. And then it loads a terminal emulator written in Java that's talking to the same AS400 in the back end. And then he looks me in the eye and he says, this is way better than before. That's not what Berners-Lee wanted, right? That's not what he wanted. That was these weird little virtual machines, these weird little programs that live next to these documents. And they're only good for making these little physics demos and, making a GIF look shimmery against some water. Totally not how the web was supposed to be. It wasn't the application platform that we were promised. Now I pick on Java. I'm picking specifically on Java on the client side. I'm picking on applets because I did applets. I worked at Nike in like 1997 doing hot Java machines. Remember those? And it was write once, debug everywhere. It was fantastic. Didn't work. They were trying to bring another operating system inside of the browser, and it was awkward and it was uncomfortable. But all the while, this is happening. Now, don't do this. Java people hate that. I don't know why they called it JavaScript. It's just because it's fun to say Java. That's the only reason why, right? It was called LiveScript, and now they're calling it ECMAScript or ES6. But do you remember the first time that you saw that JavaScript could be useful? Like there was a moment, like an actual visceral moment. I remember the first time, because I used to just type in like alert, pwned as my first name and everything, right? Just to see if it was useful. I thought that JavaScript rather was for message boxes, right? But one day I was filling out a form and I hit tab and it validated my phone number. But it was really fast and I was like, what? What happened? So then I did it again. We've all had that moment and you go, I think it's validating all my information on the client side. I don't think it posted back to the server. And I ripped my computer out of it, and I was running over to my wife, and I'm like, look at that, that's amazing. And she's like, I don't care. And then I run over to my boss, and he's like, I don't care. And I was like, it validated the information on the client side. JavaScript has value. That's amazing. And then I started learning JavaScript. Here is a flow chart about what it's like to work in JavaScript. It's an incredibly intuitive and comfortable language. What? JavaScript, yeah. So while all of this is happening, on the client side, while I'm trying to validate text boxes, 16-year-old Danish kids are writing Commodore 64 complete emulators in JavaScript just to prove that it's possible. What else can you do? Someone else did this. This is a complete 386 emulator and a full instance of Linux written entirely in JavaScript. Yeah. And the way that you prove it, though, because you always have to prove these things, you got to right-click on it to make sure it doesn't say about Flash. Because if it does, you liar! Hey, look at this cool web thing I saw. Right click. Oh, come on. That's not real. You got to select it. If it selects, it must be real. It's true though, right? So now I'm going to go out to the command line and I'm going to run TCC and I'm going to compile C hello world. So now I'm running Windows, running a browser, running Linux, which is running JavaScript, which is now running a C compiler to say hello world, right? That's the layers of abstraction, right? I did this once at a conference, and while I was doing this demo, someone yelled out, "Why didn't you use GCC?" I'm running Windows, running Chrome, running JavaScript, running Linux, running. I'm not trying to make a political statement via my choice of C compiler. So I'm trying to think, like, what can I do that would be as awesome as the guy did with the chief architect of Netflix. So instead, on Windows, I loaded up a iPhone simulator. So now I'm running Windows, running iPhone, running Safari, running JavaScript, running Linux, running a C compiler. And I told him that running GCC was an exercise to the reader. So then, yesterday, we see amazing AR and VR demos, which is out of control. You can do some amazing stuff, but you have to have JavaScript. You can't disable JavaScript. There's people out there who will tell you that they disable JavaScript. I browse the web with JavaScript disabled. It's the only safe way. I'm also a vegan CrossFitter. Went to MIT and Stanford. They'll tell you all of that before their first name. People are making amazing games, full 3D type things. They're taking things like C++ and running through Clang and Asm.js and making full applications. So at this point, people usually assume that, okay, yeah, Scott's going to go and run Quake in the browser. Yeah, it's so over the top. Yeah, I guess this is the moment where we all run Doom and see how fun. No. I'm not going to do it. It's cheap. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because it's cheap, and I want to make sure that I show up the AR guy. I want to make sure that he knows that I appreciate him, and I appreciate the work that he's doing in VR and AR. So instead, we're going to bring up a full emulator of 386 and Windows inside a virtual desktop so that I can go back in the 90s. Done entirely in JavaScript. I know I need a little work. I need to go into QEMM and I need to modify some high mem.sys and a little bit of stuff to get this to work. But there you go. That is a full Windows for Workgroups implementation. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and just run Solitaire. There we go. That is what's possible with JavaScript. Sorry. So this is all possible with JavaScript. But your boss is probably going, do you really think that HTML5 is it baked enough for us? Do you think we here at AFLAC should be using? Let's just wait a little while. It's probably too early. It's too soon for JavaScript. Jeff Atwood, creator of Atwood's Law, indicated that any software that can be written in JavaScript will eventually be written in JavaScript, right? We all know that to be true. That is, in fact, also true about Microsoft Excel. 80% of the world runs on Excel. What people don't really understand, and what I'm trying to get across to folks and to the woman at Intel, was that there's multiple operating systems now. JavaScript's one of them. Your phone has another operating system. It's got that JavaScript one inside. Now, this young man said that betting on HTML5 as opposed to native was a mistake when they did their stuff. If you notice that they've rewritten the Facebook native clients for iOS multiple times. But then, ironically, yesterday, they did things like React VR. And they did rewrote React again. React Fiber? So now they are betting on the web. So they finally got on board. Now when we say JavaScript, when we say HTML5, it's really a family of technologies, right? HTML5 is kind of like this umbrella that means HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. Those things are the web platform. And if you take this list of stuff up here and you overlay the characteristics of JavaScript with the characteristics required for something to be an operating system, you can see that JavaScript has all those things that it needs. It's got WebSockets, it's got APIs, it's got security, it's got a 2D and 3D drawing environment. There's a whole world there that it looks and smells like an OS. Now it can be challenging though to figure out whether something is in fact HTML5. So I've made a little test for you. The way that you tell HTML from HTML5 is you try it out in Internet Explorer. And if it didn't work, it's HTML5. Now, there was a time when tables were the most advanced problem in computer science. Learning TR and TD was the most complicated thing that you could know. And I knew that because I was like, had no job. Hey, do you know tables? I do. I do know tables. Boom, software engineer. A couple weeks later, do you know row span? I do know row span. Senior engineer, running the whole company at that point, based entirely on my skills in tables. I know that in Netscape Navigator 4, the maximum number of nested tables is 32. And the only way that you know that is when, during a caffeinated all-night coding session, you write that 33rd table. And you stare Satan directly in the face and you say, I don't think so, Satan. I don't think so. But these days, HTML is simpler than ever, right? You ever have like an amazing web page, you see the most powerful VR example or the most amazing JavaScript sample, and you right-click on it and you go view source, and there's a div. That's it. And then source, script, app.js. They fooled you again. HTML is only the structure, right? CSS is that color and that style. CSS is fantastic. It's this amazing language that gives you a complete understanding about what you're going to get. It's powerful and expressive. You always know what you're going to get with CSS. I was going to pass out mugs. But I spoke, I don't see them in the room here, but I spoke to one of the designers that was here to help me fix this mug so that I could actually give you all mugs. I'm not really happy with the way that it turned out. So there is no giveaway during this talk, and I apologize ahead of time. So at this point then, JavaScript is for everything else, right? And the JavaScript's great. We love JavaScript. We saw that there are some initial annoyances. We do have some video of me as a child learning JavaScript for the very first time that we should take a look at. JavaScript is so great that you don't even need to learn the bad parts. My buddy John Ressig wrote this great book. I do recommend it greatly. It's called Secrets of a JavaScript Ninja. That is a samurai. So I said, hey, John Ressig, inventor of jQuery, why is there a samurai on the cover of Secrets of a JavaScript Ninja? And he says, oh, well, that's very simple, because JavaScript is loosely typed. Duck typing. I apologize for that joke. Now, a number of years ago, I wrote a blog post called JavaScript is the assembly language of the web. It's an amazing quote. I'm going to go ahead and just make that a quote. But it's one of those things that I said that everyone said before, right? You can't really tell if someone said something. You know, Abraham Lincoln said you can't trust quotes on the internet, right? So I said that JavaScript is becoming the assembly language of the web, and it was one of those quotes that became a thing, and Reddit was like, oh, you suck, because of Reddit. And so I went and I asked the inventors of JavaScript if that was true or not. So I went and I found Brendan Eich, who invented JavaScript in a weekend. And that is Brendan Fraser from The Mummy. This is Brendan Eich. Oh, but Brendan Fraser is a beautiful man, so we'll just give him some face time. Brendan Fraser said that he's a JavaScript is the x86 of the web, but he can't claim it's original, right? Because it's one of those things, right? People say that stuff because it's true. I don't know why people argued against it. What's even better is that years and years later, WebAssembly is happening. WebAssembly is showing up now in builds of Firefox. You can actually compile C++ or any language into a real thing, a binary web assembly language, and run that, and it's a joint effort between Google and Microsoft and Mozilla, and it's fantastic. The challenge here, as we pop the stack all the way back to the beginning, where we talk about the cloud and what the cloud hides from you, is to think about what JavaScript hides from you. Layers can hide complexity. You get jQuery, you think you're kind of slick. Hey, jQuery, I'm fancy, check me out, jQuery. I'm gonna do that one again just because that's so magical. I love jQuery. jQuery is an incredible thing that moved the web forward. I'm in no way trying to pick on jQuery, but I am trying to remind people, though, that if you learn at a certain level of abstraction, anything below that is magic. And magic is a huge problem if you're trying to become a software developer, because one level down the call stack is the answer that you need. Now, sometimes people say, well, no one writes JavaScript anymore. They write jQuery. You can go and interview someone. You bring them in for the interview, and you say, hey, do a node selection here. Select a node in the DOM. And then they go $open, resig, whatever. And then you say, well, no, just do it in vanilla JavaScript. Do you know who said this quote? This is jQuery who said that. jQuery, if you go and Google for jQuery, you'll find jQuery's Wikipedia page here is jQuery. This article is about the actor. For the JavaScript library, see jQuery. So there's a picture of jQuery. jQuery has done a lot of work on Nickelodeon. He was in Fred the Show and Fred 2, Night of the Living Fred. This is a real guy. The great thing, though, about jQuery is that once you know jQuery, and then you know and you like jQuery, and you're familiar with jQuery's work, you will never be able to use jQuery for anything at a project. Like, you're going to go back to your office, and someone's going to say, should we use jQuery on this project? And say, I don't know. Let me call his agent and see if he's available. You get this image in your mind about what you're going to build with jQuery, and like, this is going to be amazing, I can visualize it, and then you build it, and it isn't quite what you expected, and you don't know like who to blame, like whose fault it is. So then it's like, whoa, and you feel gross. Consider using vanilla.js, right? Suffer. Experience that at the low level. Vanilla.js is this amazing JavaScript library that you should familiarize yourself with. vanillajs.com. Fast, lightweight, cross-platform. It's great. You can actually go in here and pick the features that you want in your JavaScript library, and it will go and dynamically build you a library. It is a little bit bigger when you zip it. But it's super convenient, and what's great about it is that when you start in development, you just go like this, right? But then when it comes time for deployment and production, you just comment that out. It's an incredibly powerful library that you should use. People need to expect more from their web tools. So I tried to express to the woman at Intel that she knew this stuff. She understands the layering, she understands the concepts, and having a full and complete awareness of the front end all the way to the back end will make you a better developer. You should use software as a service, you should use platform as a service, you should indulge in things like AR and VR that lets you do things in JavaScript, but you should always remember what is underlying that. But what the great thing is about what's underlying is it's actually plugging together very nicely. In 2017, we're finally at the point where things fit together well. We've got this great choice of clouds. It's got massive scale and massive elasticity in your choice of language. None of these clouds were designed saying you need to do it this way or you need to use this language. But we always forget about the browser. We forget about how powerful it is and that everyone's computer now in 2017 has accelerated graphics. We used to put in custom cards for accelerated graphics. So it's amazing to me, now we have these powerful machines and still we will go and generate a PNG on the server side to do a chart, as opposed to using things like D3.js. We have deceptively powerful browsers, and they all have a rich and integrated and always up-to-date virtual machine. Plugins are dead. Plugins are gone. Flash, Silverlight, Java on the client side are all gone. They've been turned off. The NS APIs are pulled out of Firefox. So your user has this powerful virtual machine that you can write JavaScript to. You can target it. It's amazing. You'll see modern web apps right now send a table over to the client side, and then when someone chooses to sort, they'll post that back to the server, because we all know that the browser can't possibly sort lists of 10 to 12 items, right? And then have the server sort that, right? You can do incredible things with your users' machines. Sometimes people will have 10 computers in their web farm and 1,000 users, and they'll say, well, we need more VMs. Well, hang on, you've got 10 plus 1,000. Can we put those machines to work? Can we do something more on the client side? And we're doing that now. So I told her, I said, you already know the cloud. You program the browser. You are powerful. So get to work. Thank you very much.